Hello and welcome back to another team news live stream on Fantasy Football Scout. No fancy long intros today. The deadline is only 4 hours away, less than 4 hours away at this point. So we're going to get straight into it in just a sec. Neale, how are you doing?
Good. Yeah. Let's crack on. I've got to get back to the team news myself after this, so I'll get through this as quickly as I can today, I think.
Yeah, let's just start straight away, right? Let's start with Everton because James Rodriguez was almost ruled out. Ancelotti thought he wasn't going to be fit, but that's kind of changed today with the press conference, right?
Yeah, so I think he actually gave an interview with Everton TV on Wednesday, I believe it was, which went out yesterday, in which he said he was a serious doubt. But today has said that he's made a great recovery, that he's not definitely out, and that he's even joined in training. He's been partially training today with the rest of the club, and he's going to train hopefully tomorrow, and then they're going to assess him ahead of Sunday. But yeah, a swift backtracking on that. He sounded like a major doubt yesterday, and then all of a sudden now he's at a point where Ancelotti said he's confident that maybe he can play. So it's been a flag change in FPL, as you've probably seen. Hopefully you haven't sold him if based on yesterday's bulletin, but it sounds a lot more better than it did yesterday, and he's definitely in contention at least. Even if we haven't got a clear cut, he's definitely fit. But elsewhere in Everton, Coleman's definitely out, as is Kenny as well. He's possible understudy, so Godfrey's going to play at right back. Richarlison suspended, of course. So there will be a couple of changes to the starting 11 based on what we're used to this season. But yeah, Rodriguez might not be one of them. He might actually be all right to start.
Yeah, it was a hematoma he had that I had to Google,
Yeah.
and it looks to me just like a bruise. So
Yeah.
I'm saying he just wanted to have a dig about Van Dijk.
I think so.
Yeah, he just wanted to say that Van Dijk, because he did go in on him. It wasn't really a great challenge. So yeah, there we go. So I think he's going to be back. A few people in chat are asking the question, should you start or not? I've got him 100% going to start him. Like the risk is obviously there, but I can't imagine many people have got so many good bench options that you don't hope for a double-digit haul from him. So I'm definitely starting him. Let's move on to a manager that wasn't quite as helpful. Pep Guardiola for Man City. Did he give us any confirmed news in the press conference?
Only that Jesus is still out, as we knew anyway. I think he's going to be a little while. But yeah, he was asked specifically about De Bruyne, Laporte, and Nathan Ake. De Bruyne and Laporte missed out last weekend. Ake missed out in midweek with, I think, a minor groin niggle. And what he said in response to that, at least in the broadcast section, was that some of them will be involved and some of them not. And that we'll only know tomorrow when we get the team sheets from East London. So absolutely no help there, as we're accustomed to with Pep, unfortunately. But De Bruyne and Laporte are back in training, as people might have seen by now. They were pictured yesterday in training. I think probably as only part of the squad were involved because City were in midweek European action and they would have had a bit of a recovery day after that. But they're back on the training ground at least. So if they don't make this weekend, then almost certainly the week after, you think, for those two. And Ake, given that it was a minor niggle, the club reported, doesn't sound like any of those are serious. But yeah, Fernandinho's out, along with Mendy and Jesus as well.
I liked the evil laugh in brackets for the quote on the tweet for Pep Guardiola.
Yeah,
I can just imagine him doing that.
I usually play it with a straight bat when I'm reporting the quotes, but it was a smirk of a laugh. So I felt compelled to report that as well.
It'd be interesting to see if De Bruyne is back, because they haven't yet had like De Bruyne, Sterling, Aguero all on the pitch at the same time this season. So it's very hard to kind of know what to make of Man City. So if he is back, that'll be big then to see how they perform against West Ham. Like I've seen quite a few reports about how many times they've battered West Ham away in the last few seasons.
Yeah.
It's always like 3, 4, 5-0. So this will be an interesting game because West Ham are doing well. So we'll see what happens there. Chelsea, I think there was only one injury there. Was it to Kepa? Is he the main one out? Who's probably not going to play anyway.
That's right. Yeah, he's out, and as you say, Mendy will be playing regardless. Gilmore was a longer term one, but he's nearing a return. And yeah, and Lampard said Pulisic and Thiago are both fine from midweek. So yeah, just the two injuries, none of whom will be of any interest to fantasy managers.
Yeah, it'd be good to see Ziyech, Pulisic, etc. all start, 'cause that's what everyone has been waiting for since the start of the season, to then really, kind of assess how good Chelsea can be, because the summer signings certainly would show that they're going to be. Let's go on to Wolves again. Another manager hasn't really helped us out. I guess, as well as what he said, what do you think the chances are? Because I mean, people are worried about Sice. I feel like that's come out of nowhere. It's just FPL managers worrying over nothing, and obviously Kilman as well has played really well. Do you think he's going to keep his place?
It's tough to say. Obviously, Nuno's no help. He's as bad as Pep a lot of the time for giving us any kind of update. The thing I would say about Santo is that he doesn't change stuff that often, at least not traditionally. He was always a guy who preferred a settled team. There was a bit of an anomaly at the start of last season when they were in the Europa League, like qualifying rounds, when he would be changing every week. But generally speaking, he tends to keep things fairly settled. I know that hasn't always been the case when he's been flip-flopping between a 3-5-2 and a 3-4-3, but defensively, he doesn't make that many changes. So, yeah, I mean, he didn't do anything wrong, Kilman, and neither did Saiss at left wing back either. I think Marcel's just back now, so he obviously came on for a few minutes, I think, against Leeds. But off the back of a clean sheet, 2 clean sheets, is there any need to change it? I wouldn't like to make a certain call. Obviously, if you want a nailed Wolves defender, it's Bolly and Cody. I think everyone else, bar them, carries a degree of rotation risk.
Maybe Semedo.
Semedo, yeah.
I guess Traore could play there, to be fair. So yeah, Cody and Bolly, they're only 100%. But Semedo should be pretty good as well if you want to spend a bit extra.
Yeah, I think we saw earlier this season that Traore was not really a wing back. He's great going forward, and actually he could be an option this weekend because Newcastle isn't going to offer much going the other way. But I think we saw his defensive limitations, and obviously that's why we didn't see him there much when Doherty was at the club. And as you see, I think Semedo was probably the third most secure after Cody and Bolly. So yeah, always a risk with the rest, but based on current form, I think why change it?
Yeah, I think he must trust Sice enough if he's playing him out left wing back. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see this. I think this week will be the kind of decider, because Marcel is back now. So if he's fit to play and he doesn't, that spells good things for Kilman. He's only 4.1 million, which is just ridiculous value for a Wolves defender. So he'll be in everyone's teams if he carries on. So we'll see what happens there. What about Leicester and Jamie Vardy? He was a doubt last week, didn't play. Any luck for this week, do you think?
Yeah, sounds a lot more positive. This was a press conference that Rodgers gave after last night's Europa League game. And he said that Leicester are thinking that Vardy will be available. It's going to need to confirm it over the next couple of days. He's already been on the grass, taking part in training, so he'll be joining in with the rest of the squad on Friday, and then they're going to assess it ahead of the Sunday game at Arsenal. So sounds a lot more confident anyway. And given his record against Arsenal, you think that he's one of those where you'd want to play him if he's anywhere near full fitness. Obviously, he's got these sort of chronic recurring problems. The calf thing is a bit of a longer-term one. So is the hip. But I think, as well as Iheanacho did on Thursday, Rodgers has said in the past that Iheanacho is a big part player. He's an impact sub. So if he's anywhere close to being, I don't think so. No, I think they're just the ones we knew about. So the longer-term ones like Soyuncu, Pereira, Amati, and people like that. So I don't think there's anything new from Thursday night. Although he did name a strong team in that. Madison, they've been carefully managing his minutes, and he played, I think, 65 minutes of that game on Thursday. So I wonder if he's going to be back among the bench.
Actually, interestingly, it was quite a strong team. It was pretty much first choice, wasn't it? But Justin didn't play.
Yeah.
Did he mention anything about that at all? Have you seen? I haven't seen anything, so I assume maybe it was just a tactical thing, and he might be back. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do wonder about that. Yeah, that was obviously I'm just knowing. I probably wouldn't be playing him anyway, but obviously a slight concern. Didn't play Perez, but again, Perez is arguably dispensable in that team. There is an option of playing both Fuchs and Justin this weekend. He's played the wing back system in the past in the tougher games. Did so again against Arsenal last season away from home. So Fuchs could be the left-sided centre half. Justin could be the wing back. But yeah, a little cause for concern, I think. But maybe it was. Only Rodgers really knows. I think maybe it was purely preservation of legs, and something to combat a threat that he saw with their opponents on Thursday.
Yeah, if he does play again, it's looking good. I know the fixtures aren't great, but obviously Pereira having a little bit of a setback looks good for potentially good for Justin. Let's see what happens this week. Let's go on to Liverpool. So I was watching the Champions League game and I saw that Salah, Mane, and Firmino all came off on the 59th minute, and Mane had was putting ice on his knee or his thigh or something. Was that anything to be worried about, or is he fine for this weekend?
Well, Klopp said after the game that he was all right. That it's something he treats after a game, and then he's all right to go. I think it's a fairly regular occurrence actually. A player putting ice on their legs
Yeah,
after they've come off. We've seen it. Yeah, we've seen it more and more now, haven't we? So I don't think there's any concern there. It certainly wasn't mentioned today. But yeah, there was an interesting discussion actually about or lack of discussion about Alisson. So Klopp ruled out Oxlade-Chamberlain, Van Dijk, who's going to be long term, and Tsimikas as well. But the rest, he said, could be in contention. So, and that includes Alisson, who's already back on the training ground. He was originally ruled out for 4 to 6 weeks, I think. I think it's been about 3, so it hasn't been long at all. He himself says he doesn't know because he hasn't heard from the medical staff yet, and of course there's like the first full day back in training on Friday, so he'll make a decision then. But he's going to be recovering a lot sooner than what we thought, Alisson. Even if it's not this weekend, then pretty soon, which is great if you're a winner of Alexander-Arnold or Robertson. Of course, they're down Van Dijk. But to have their first choice goalkeeper back, given the alternatives, Adrian is obviously a huge fillip, I think, for the defence. The rest of them fall into the same category as Alisson, really. So Matip, Thiago, and Keita, I think all have been back in training. Klopp wouldn't say either way whether they're going to play, but he says he hasn't heard anything yet to rule any of those out.
Yeah, I don't think it will look quite as bad. If Matip's there, of course, he's not Van Dijk, but he's not a bad defender, and Alisson back would be huge. So I think a lot of talk about getting rid of Liverpool defenders. I really do think Sheffield United at home is probably the wrong time to be forcing them out unless you absolutely need the money. But yeah, it's got to be a clean sheet this week. Even if Adrian's in goal, surely it's going to happen. Although Brewster, who knows, gets his first start. We'll talk about Sheffield United in a minute. Maybe he will spoil the party. But yeah, it sounds promising for Liverpool if Alisson's back. What about Man United? So Maguire was missing for the Champions League game when they did very well. Great win, I will say, against Paris Saint-Germain, and the defence handled them pretty well, actually. Any chance he gets back in the side this weekend, do you think?
Yeah, he loves him, doesn't he, Solskjaer, even when he's in different form, and whether he's carrying a knocker, Solskjaer just seems to play him regardless. I think he was ever present last season, wasn't he? So it would take a lot to displace him, as well as Tuanzebe did. It was excellent against PSG. I think if Maguire's fit, and Solskjaer said this morning that he hopes him, Cavani, and Greenwood are all going to be all right this weekend, then you just assume Maguire starts. Unfortunately, if you're a Man United owner, I think many are longing for him to be benched with a different combination of centre half. But given that Eric Bailly's out, for example, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think he's probably going to start Maguire. I think it's, regardless of his patchy form.
Definitely. There's no way if he's unless he's actually injured. There's no way he doesn't start this game. Just £80 million. You just can't start benching. He'd have to be really bad for a long time. Plus, he was all right against Newcastle. I know Newcastle's not quite the same as PSG and Chelsea, but
definitely not.
All right.
Yeah. I think you would be more confident of the 3 that you mentioned this morning. Maguire's by far, I think, the most certain to start or confident to start. Greenwood and Cavani. I mean, Cavani's just come in. He hasn't started a competitive match in months, so maybe a substitute rule at first. But of course, Martial suspended, so there is a bit of a void up front, which Rashford filled against Newcastle and PSG. Difficult to say really, because they performed very well in France with a few changes. So, for example, Fred and McTominay playing in that sort of central midfield. Pogba benched again. Who did make a good impression when he came on. Does he go with 3 at the back again, as he did against PSG? Does he revert to 4 at the back as he played against Newcastle? So there's a bit of uncertainty there, I think. But the likes of Fernandes, Rashford, the more popular FPL options are going to start regardless. So it's more with the periphery players, the ones who are filling the rest of the slots, that there's some doubt over, I think.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what formation he does play, because I think with the current players we have, 5-3-2 makes perfect sense. We don't have too many wingers, out and out wingers anyway. Rashford can play up front. So, and we've got an abundance of central midfielders. So I think 5-3-2 makes sense. But whether or not we'll play it, be interesting. What I really want to see going forward is whether, even when we move to 4 at the back, if Tellez plays, because his delivery was very, very good, and he took straight away. He took corners off Fernandes as well. So that's something big. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe a few more games. No one's bringing in Man United defenders right now. Fully appreciate that. But in a few weeks, they play West Brom. Who knows? Maybe Tellez will be on our minds. Talking of your boys, Newcastle, Darlow. They could be down to a third choice goalkeeper this week.
Yeah, could be Gillespie, who's really not had much top flight experience at all. I think Motherwell, who's his last club. So yeah, could be him. Although the good news on Darlow's front is that it's not a tear. They've had a scan. He's still very, very sore. He's still feeling the effects of that impact, I think, from Rashford it was. So decision on him is going to be left until the last possible moment. It's going to go down to the wire, according to Bruce. So yeah, Gillespie on standby. As for the rest of them, I don't think there's much to report, really. I think the 3 lads who came back and played for the under-23s, none of whom is going to really be challenging them for a start, I think. Richard Gill, Dubravka, of course, who's the first choice goalkeeper. He's out as well. So yeah, Darlow was the main concern. Hayden as well, actually. Hayden came off in that Man United game, and I think that was one of the reasons why we capitulated. He a scan again showed no damage to his hamstring. It seemed to be more cramped, but Bruce was saying that I still have to be careful, given that it is his hamstring, because obviously if you damage something there, that's depending on the severity of it, that's weeks at least, and possibly a month. So it remains to be seen if he starts.
Interesting pricing on the keepers as well. 4.5 million now. There's no 4 million goalkeeper at Newcastle, but given that Darlow's played so many minutes and now Gillespie might come in, I think it feels like they've been priced quite well. So yeah, I think the whole Newcastle story is quite funny in terms of goalkeepers. Let's move on to Fulham. I know there's a few people actually last couple of weeks that needed to play Reed or needed him to come off the bench. It didn't happen. Is he going to be back now?
He's back in training. Although I did see a film reporter saying he wouldn't be risked this weekend. I think Kearney and Anguissa's, they've kind of got that central midfield partnership nailed. I wouldn't say nailed, but they're sort of cultivating a relationship now. Anguissa especially, I think, is a starter every week. So yeah, I wouldn't be confident at all of Reed featuring. And I think he's the only real possibility to return. I think the rest of them are still out. So the likes of Anderson, Congolo, are all out, and Onumar as well. It wasn't the end of the 25, but yeah, we'll keep that one nice and brief because I know folk won't be interested too much.
Yeah. All right. Crystal Palace next. Talking of horrible challenges last weekend, dunks on Cahill's was pretty bad. Is he going to be out this weekend?
He is. Yes, he got a nasty kick to the shin. If it's an impact injury, then hopefully there's nothing long term. But yeah, he won't feature, and neither will Jordan Ayew, who's been tested positive for coronavirus. As has Jack Butland as well, a new backup goalkeeper. He's tested positive. Hennessy's already out as well. So yeah, they've got a few options down, and mostly in reserve. To be fair, still no sign of Ferguson. But of course, if you're owner of Mitchell, then you're on tenterhooks, I think, from week to week because Van Aanholt's back. He made the bench last weekend. I haven't seen much of Hodgson's presser because it was one of the cluster that happened at this lunchtime, but. You do think it's a matter of when, not if, for Van Aanholt. The one saving grace that Mitchell's got, which I've mentioned in the team news notes, is that Van Aanholt hasn't had any match practice. I don't think he's even playing the 23s, so he's probably lacking a bit of match fitness. But when does he get match fitness? I think they're out of the Carabao Cup. Of course, he could play for the under 23s, but I guess a match against Fulham would be a game to maybe throw him in, given that. It's a sort of match you've kind of got to win, really. It's nothing like survival on the line at this point, but those are the games you're targeting. And his attacking output has been missed, I think, definitely. For as well as Mitchell's done, his threat down that left flank has been missed. 1 shot on total last weekend against Brighton, 4 the week before that against Chelsea. So, they need some attacking reinforcements. So it could be any time soon, really, for Van Aanholt, as well as Mitchell has done.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who takes penalties when Van Aanholt's back because Zaha's done all right with them. I did see a few people kind of speculating that Van Aanholt hadn't signed a new contract yet and he was out. I think it's out after the end of this season. But then the more I think about it, Crystal Palace are not a team that can I don't know, have those kind of, thoughts where they're like, well, we just won't play him because they need to survive, right? They're not a team that's necessarily going to be comfortable mid-table. So I'm assuming, like you said, he's going to come in, and Fulham's not probably the most difficult game to come in off the back of a long time out. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I've got him second bench ahead of Dallas right now, but that'll probably be the last time, I reckon, after this week. What about West Ham? Great comeback last week. How are they looking?
I think everyone's fine. According to Moyes, he said that everyone's in pretty good order. Didn't mention Antonio by name, at least not in the bits I've seen. Did mention Haller, who was missing with a knock, but at the time he said Antonio's substitution was precautionary in nature, so we're assuming he's fine. I think this has happened quite a few times where he obviously got that long-term risk of injury in his hamstrings, but he was taken off against Spurs early-ish before the comeback started. But yeah, no mention of him today, and as I said, it was a precautionary substitution at the time, so hopefully he's all right.
Cool, fingers crossed. Let's go over to Burnley next. Ben Mee, any chance of him figuring? Because Burnley have done, underlying stats-wise, Burnley have done all right, but in terms of the amount of goals they conceded, not necessarily that good. So is Mee going to be back?
He's not. No, he's not this weekend. He's back in training though, which is a positive. Just the length of time he's been out with a thigh problem, he's not going to be risked this weekend. Probably a little work in terms of conditioning still to do yet. Loughton's back though. He comes into contention, which is timely because Eric Peters, who was filling in at right back in Bardsley's absence through coronavirus, Peters himself got a calf problem and is touch and go. So it could be Loughton coming back in as a typical right back. That's where he plays. So it wouldn't be an out of position thing like Peters has been doing. Still with the longer term ones, Cork and Peacock Fowler both out, and as I say, Bardsley still self-isolating because of that positive coronavirus test. I think everyone else is okay.
Good stuff. How about Brighton? Nice easy fixture on Monday for them this week. They got any worries?
Not really, no. Dunk, of course, is suspended, so he begins a 3-match ban. Young Baksh is their only real name that mentioned by Potter in the broadcast section. He's still a doubt. Davy Propper and Christian Walton, who's a backup goalkeeper, are back in training, so they'll be assessed. Welbeck, of course, new arrival. I would suspect substitute role at first, at best. I think, again, match fitness it'll be the issue with him. He is injury-free, but it's whether he's up to play in a Premier League game, and I would guess almost certainly not from the start at the moment. And apart from that, I think that's it.
As a Morpeo owner who got so frustrated he didn't bloody shoot against Crystal Palace when he was like almost one-on-one, I'll be extremely frustrated if Danny Welbeck comes in against West Brom. But like you say, it seems extremely unlikely. But that's the kind of things that FPL do to you, worrying about Danny Welbeck. Let's go on to Sheffield United. Tough fixture for them against Liverpool. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, though, Brewster hasn't had a start yet. We thought he might get it against Fulham. Didn't happen. Do you think he's going to come into the side this week?
Well, it was, again, it's hard to make a call either way because he's had an extra week of training, as Wilder pointed out. Wilder said he definitely comes into contention. They're struggling for goals, and all the signs point to him starting. But then again, Wilder did caveat that with the physical side of it was the reason why he didn't start last weekend. So they didn't want to put him at risk of like a long-term injury by starting him when he hadn't had much match practice. He was obviously a late arrival in the transfer window, had a bit of a pre-season, but then spent the international break building up his fitness levels. So closer than he was last week, but by no means guaranteed to start. I think that the language Weather was using sort of implied that he would, but obviously a manager is not going to give away his team sheet before a game. So that's the area where they're well stocked as well. They've got 5 players, even with Musi out, who's sidelined along with Fleck and O'Connell. They've still got 5 strikers there. So McGoldrick, McBurney, Burke's played there. It's been Burke this weekend anyway. He's probably more of an emergency sub because they're away at Liverpool. Obviously, he's a longer term starter with a bit of a rotation risk. But right at this moment, you wouldn't like to see either way whether he was going to actually make the 11 at Liverpool. Purely because Wilder has a bit of a track record of easing people.
Difficult anyway. I'm sure Wilder's not thinking like this, but if they didn't win any of those 3 games, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. So maybe bedding them in 20-30 minutes per match to then get him a run for the easy fixtures, maybe. But yeah, it'd be an interesting. Like you say, I'm sure most people aren't starting him. Perhaps there's some people playing him in a 3-4-3, but for most people, it's bench fodder anyway. So I guess it's just a wait and see, and hope he's back or hope he's starting for those easier fixtures. Let's go over to one of the most informed teams in the league, Aston Villa, of course. Who else? How are they setting up for Leeds, which is tonight, obviously. It's the Friday night game.
Yeah, good news on that front, and that there was nobody mentioning Dean Smith's presser on Wednesday that we would be worried about as fantasy managers. Obviously, stuff can happen in the interim that we don't know about, but as far as we know, just House, Wesley and Heaton who are out. Davis is expected back in training after a calf problem, and other than that, Dean Smith didn't mention anybody else.
Good stuff. Let's just go straight to the team they're playing, Leeds. Now, I mean, you say Pep and Nuno are really bad for giving info. Bielsa, the complete opposite, isn't he? He's even mentioned that there's a £4 million defender that's going to be, I think he's 4.1 now, actually. I have to check that. Who's going to be playing in midfield, right?
He's brilliant. I absolutely love him. This is about the third time he's done this season, because he did it with Alioski, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and then he did it with, who was it? Was it Roberts or Rodrigo? I can't remember which one. Yeah, he's pretty forthcoming with his team news. And yeah, Calvin Phillips is out for originally 6-week prognosis, but Bielsa saying he wasn't sure whether it's going to be more or less than that. So in his place will be Struijk.
I don't know. I'd go with Struijk. No one's told me. I think we can get away with it for now. But if he's going to play more prominently, we'll have to probably get it right for next week. Yeah.
So yeah, he's obviously a defender in FPL, as you said there, and he'll be playing not so much out of position, because a bit like Lundstrom, this is kind of his position. He's a bit of a versatile player. He can play the centre half or defensive midfield. There's a lot of Leeds players can play in multiple positions. So he's going to start. The question marks over Cooper still. Bielsa said he couldn't say for certain whether he's going to feature against Villa. So it could be a bit of a reshuffle at the back, with maybe Elan moving to centre half if Cooper's not ready, Dallas going over to right back, and then someone like Alioski brought in at left back. They've got competition further forward as well. Rafinha is obviously pushing for a start on either flank. Pablo Hernandez is fit again, so could challenge Rodrigo as a sort of a number 10. But again, I think maybe, he's 35, I think now, so he's going to be more substitute than not this season. But yeah, that's as much as we know from Leeds, which is a lot compared to certain other clubs.
Yeah, definitely. I love the way he operates in the press conferences. I do worry as a Leeds defender owner. I'm not probably going to play them this week, but I do worry about the amount of injuries they've got. Kind of, Cooper might not be there. Llorente and Phillips obviously a huge miss as well. And I know the players and his tactics are versatile for moving around, but it's obviously not ideal when the first choice players are out. So we'll see how they cope against Grealish and co tonight. Let's go to Arsenal. I don't know if there was a press conference, because obviously they played. It was last night, wasn't it? I think so.
Yeah.
Have we heard from Arteta at all?
It's just happened actually. It was scheduled for earlier today, I think mid morning, but in fact, I've just read on the site. This is actually quotes held over from last night, which actually makes lots of sense, because that's what happened with Rodgers and Mourinho. So yeah, it was a bit of a 2-part press conference. Just checking on this now, actually. Yeah, Arteta's saying they've just got to assess a few players. Got some knocks and niggles from the Europa League. Danny Ceballos and Willian both missed out on Thursday. They were minor problems, apparently, and they're going to be assessed ahead of the Sunday game against Leicester. Arteta says they haven't trained yet, but that's, that wasn't any shocks, because, of course, Arsenal were away in Europe, in Austria. And he says they're going to have to see how they react in the next couple of days. But, Mustafi came back as well, even on the bench. And Rob Holding's going to be out for 3 weeks, I think, in defence.
Good stuff. I think we have 3 teams left, by my reckoning, if I've got it right. And by the way, I should say, because people pointed out in the chat that, yes, Struijk is still 4 million, not 4.1. So that might not last very long if he gets an attacking return tonight. 3 teams left. Southampton, West Brom and Spurs. Have we heard from all them?
Yes, to an extent. Again, Mourinho was holding this last night, and it was a 2-for-1. Dyer is obviously the main concern, I think, for this weekend. I'll check if there's any update on him, but he missed out. over in the Europa League on Thursday, and Tanganga was the absentee, but no injuries reported. Kane was thankfully rested. A lot of the first teams were actually. Son got, I think, a half an hour cameo off the bench and scored. So positive news on that front. Reguilon played the match again, but I think that was possibly because Davies was needed at centre half. I think otherwise he might have had a rest himself. But I think it'll be probably a very similar team that we saw against West Ham before the capitulation, with maybe one or two changes. Dyer, if he's fit, I would think he would maybe come back in, given that Burnley's, their aerial prowess, and Dyer could help with that. But otherwise, probably a similar team. West Brom, Soundfield's got a knee injury. He'll be out along with Robson Carnew. And I think that's all we really know from West Brom. And who was the other one again?
Southampton.
Southampton, that's right, yeah. Walcott is ineligible because he is facing his parent club, which is Everton. But Armstrong's back in training. He's obviously been self-isolating after the incident in the national break. And he's an option according to Hassan Huttle this weekend. I think Smallbone's out. Jeanette was still out as well. So if Armstrong doesn't make it, then they've got Nathan Teller who can possibly play. But one of the more settled sides, I think, that's happening at the moment. And I think that may be the only position where there's any kind of change.
Good stuff. So I just see someone asking in the chat about Gareth Bale. So he was the one that came off for Son last night. So he's had 62 minutes. So he's had, 10, 15 minutes in the game last week against West Ham. And then 60 minutes. So is he going to start? I mean, obviously Neale can give his opinion in a minute, but I got a feeling he's going to be benched again.
Yeah.
Because I think he looked quite rusty against West Ham. I mean, to be fair, he did get into that really good position where he should have scored. And that was kind of just looking at Gareth Bale of old. But yeah, do you think it's a chance of another benching when he gets up to full fitness?
I think you're right. Yeah, that's my reading of it. Obviously, only Mourinho really knows. But I think he's he himself even said it, he's a bit rusty. So and I think he did look at it again a little bit last night as well. So yeah, I think he'll be benched. I think they've got plenty of options there. I don't need to rush him in. Big Wine was rested last night, for example. So I would think it would be him and maybe even Lucas ahead of Bale. So yeah, he'll get there eventually. But I think this weekend is probably too soon for a start.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, obviously we'll have to wait and see, but yeah, that's kind of my opinion. I was a bit annoyed to see Reguilon start last night, but I think the fact that because Davis started as well probably is good news for this weekend. Hopefully he doesn't get through to 82 minutes with a double-digit haul and then loses it all, because that was extremely frustrating. I see a few questions about James Rodriguez. We don't know if he's going to play, but it sounds a lot more promising than it did yesterday. If you want to check that bit out, go back to the start of it. I will leave it there because we need to go and get this up on podcasts and stuff, and it's now just over 3 hours to the deadline. I know Neale's got a lot to do. So if you want to check out if there is any new quotes or information, follow us on FF Scout on Twitter. Keep an eye on the site as well. There'll be a team news article roundup too. Neale, thanks very much for joining me today.
Cheers, Andy. Goodbye, everybody.
Big shout out to Neale, by the way, who's having internet connection problems, so he's sat on the floor. That is how dedicated he is to the Team News stream. So if you haven't already given the video a like, make sure you do for Neale sitting on the floor. Hit that subscribe button.
Cramp.
Yeah, with cramp. And hopefully we'll get him a chair for this time next week. Cheers all and good luck in Game Week 6.